there was that's all that I guess that's almost 12 months ago now. Was paper from a company called Profluent, who published a paper where they used one of these protein LLMs to basically generate new versions of CRISPR that do not exist in nature but still work as genome editors. So that's being kind of I think that's something that's only kind of still also percolating through the industry, that now we can basically take a protein that has a function that we want and make like a completely synthetic mimic of it. That has a different sequence from what is found in nature, but still does the job we want.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Founders in Arms podcast with me, Immad, Akhund, co-founder and CEO of Mercury.
And I'm Raj Suri, co-founder of Lima and Tribe. And today we have with us Hannu Rajaniemi. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. And Hannu is a co-founder CEO of a biotech company called Helix Nano, and also a prolific author of the Quantum Thief series and many other science fiction novels. Hannu, welcome back to the show. You were on when we were the Curiosity podcast too. So actually, you're our first return guest.
Oh, amazing. It's my honor to be back.
Yeah, we love talking to you, so we wanted to have you back.
Before I met Hannu, I read one of his books, and maybe all of his books, actually, at least all the ones that are on audiobooks, and I love your books. So you've launched Dark Ohm, but it's not an audiobook yet. Is it complicated to get it into an audiobook?
It is actually available on Audible in the UK. So people have reported success by, you can temporarily change your geography on Audible. So that does apparently work.
Why is it not in the US though? Is it done with like a British voice or something?
We're still figuring out a US deal. So it's basically one slight obstacle and slight spoiler is it's book 1 of 2. So I think some US publishers want to see the second part, or want to do like a two book thing.
Raj, have you read Hannu's books?
No, I actually bought one of them, but I haven't yet read it. We should do it for
it's
one
like
of our book
super
clubs.
hard sci-fi. I love the whole sci-fi, but like obviously Hannu is just like a deeply technical person, so I think that really shows through. What have you been up to, Hannu? I guess it's probably been almost a year since we last talked. Like what's been the updates, both for you, the company, and also I guess like how the most recent environment, AI upgrades, and all that stuff has like changed what you've been kind of working on.
Yeah, so quite a lot of stuff going on there. So Helix Nano, kind of starting from the company side, like Helix Nano has been running a clinical trial, which is now fully dosed, and we have some exciting human data that I mean the trial is still technically ongoing, so I can't, I think, officially disclose the results, but
and that's with the FDA.
This is actually related to the other topic you mentioned. This is actually with TGA in Australia. So
okay, interesting.
So unaffected by the recent events, at least so far. I think we are very excited by what the outcomes are so far. I mean, a lot of work also on oncology, it's kind of there is this interesting convergence with the ideas in Dark Ohm that Immad alluded to of basically making the immune system digitally updatable and the kinds of things we're working on. It is of course also hard to escape the impact of AI, and the single thing I'm probably the most excited about across like basically everything is combining reasoning models with mRNA. So there's like a non-intuitive, but you can't unsee it once it sort of clicks, kind of complementarity between those two technologies. We can talk more about that. That's something also we're now collaborating on with one of the big AI labs. And again, like limited in what I can say about the exact work, but the kind of overall topic I think I can talk about. So those are, and my wife and yes, go ahead. No, my wife and I also had our second child, so that's probably why I'm looking more haggard perhaps than I was last time with you in the podcast.
Immad will be like that very soon, so it's gonna.
I know. I heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like 2 weeks to go, probably.
Yeah. You'll be still doing the podcast, right, Immad? You're going to be podcasting with a newborn on your lap.
I'll try. I'm taking like a few weeks off work, so I guess I'll have more time for the podcast.
Right. We'll do a 3-hour podcast. We'll do a Joe Rogan podcast. Yeah. What I wanted to do is remind our audience that what you do at Helix Nano, right? So it's very interesting technology. It's you're using mRNA vaccine technology to augment the immune system. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much the one-liner summary. So mRNA is this very natural API to human biology or all of biology, and gives us the ability to really talk to the immune system in its own language. It can do a lot more than just vaccines, but and I guess like I would say mRNA vaccines are vaccines in the same sense that computers are calculators, but we do also believe in the power of the immune system as one of the most foundational parts that impacts our health.
Super cool. So I guess one question is, why Australia? Why are you working with Australia, and what makes that such a great place to work?
So Australia does have a very like a top tier regulator. So the TGA is just as rigorous and disciplined and so on as the FDA. But they're leaner and faster. So there's a little less red tape to deal with, and it's it is for the types of studies we're doing. It is just a natural geography, and also where we want to deploy the products that we're developing.
Can you quantify the difference? Like, how many years would it take you to do the same thing with the US FDA versus the Australia TDA? Is it?
Yeah, I think our lawyers would probably also tell me that I should not directly talk about regulatory arbitrage. But for us specifically, we probably saved about 9 months just in terms of getting the trial started. So it is quite significant. And then the kind of cadence of interactions has overall also been faster. We certainly intend to also to engage with the FDA as well for this and other programs, but this was a really great way to get started.
Yeah, let's try to think of other things we can do to get you in trouble with your lawyers. What are your general thoughts on the changes at the FDA? A, do you think there's a lot of change required? And B, do you think the kind of RFK administration will be the change agent we need?
Yeah, the hero we need or the hero we deserve. What's the the villain? Who knows? It's obviously everyone is watching very closely what's happening. Obviously the FDA was set up with a particular purpose, really this safety above everything in response to the I can never pronounce that. Thalidomide.
That was like a medicine that killed new babies, right?
And caused horrible birth defects, really one of the worst disasters of that kind in history. And that's sort of where the current structure of the FDA really flowed from. But the FDA, even prior to the current events, has been working actually quite hard to figure out how to adapt. And there are some extremely forward-looking thinking people inside the FDA. And one example I'd sort of call out, who I hope very strongly is kind of survives the current changes, is Peter Marks, who heads the CBER branch of the FDA, who was also one of the chief architects of Operation Warp Speed that developed the COVID vaccines, and he's been really thinking really hard about how does one, for example, deal with AI? How does one regulate things like personalized mRNA vaccines for cancer, where you might be making a different product for each individual, which furthermore is actually designed by a neural network. So they are very much have been thinking about those kinds of things, and also on the medical devices side, figuring out frameworks where if you have an AI system that learns, like how do you actually under what circumstances can you update that algorithm on your device without having to rerun all the trials? Because traditionally, the fixed product that you take through the trials is the one that you're allowed to sell. But now they are trying to figure out how to be more dynamic and adaptable. Now, obviously, there's been organizational inertia, and these changes take time. And now I think certainly the kind of near term, immediate practical impact of like personal cuts at the FDA is that people are actually getting bogged down. They're getting bogged down with like too many IND filings and are sort of at over capacity. So
too many what filings?
So that's investigational new drug applications. So that's like the first package you put into the FDA.
Tie into kind of the AI thing. Like we're just going to have a lot more drugs people want to test because of AI.
Or I think because of China.
Yeah.
So one trend in the pharmaceutical industry is that there's a lot of clones of or like variants on a theme so coming from China that is now about 30% of the big pharma pipelines.
So you're saying 30% of all these applications to the FDA are Chinese drug manufacturers?
Well, not necessarily to the FDA, but like in terms of big pharma companies filling their pipelines, and then some of those trials obviously are later stage trials are carried out also under the FDA. So. But I mean, I guess like we haven't seen. There's a whole topic there of like why haven't we yet seen AI impact drug discovery productivity? But that hasn't happened yet. I'm sure it will, but that has not happened yet. So I think near term, there's going to be just like bit of a like a log jam of applications, and companies will struggle to execute their programs in a timely fashion. The longer term impact is really difficult to foresee. Certainly, the sort of RFK Jr. presence has caused jitters amongst biotech investors and pharmaceutical companies around vaccines, undeniably. Maybe the silver lining with the sort of Trump administration engagement with the FDA and the health industry is that in the previous iteration they were very pro compassionate use. So they were trying to figure out how could you use rapidly like an unapproved drug for a patient to treat a patient who has a life-threatening condition. So like make that process very effortless and rapid, which I think in my view is a good thing. So I would expect that those kinds of pathways get accelerated again, which I think can also have positive impact. So near term certainly like problematic right now. Long term maybe it'll be useful creative destruction. We'll see.
You don't think there's like a good path to, I don't know, deregulation / libertarianize the FDA? I don't know what that looks like, but I guess we don't want like anyone just makes a drug and releases it without any sort of like steps. But I wonder if there's like a medium ground that's like the FDA is still there, but it's like less restrictive, goes much quicker.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of similar. That's kind of similar to the compassionate use type.
But compassionate use is
relaxing that even.
Part, right?
But yeah. But so I guess like something that fascinates me, and which Darkome, the novel, involves heavily, is actually people operating just entirely outside that framework and doing self experiments. And one of the sparks for the novel. Originally, which just like in one line, it's a nearish future, 20 years hence, where there is this underground network of biohackers doing experiments on themselves. There's also a giant company who has built this sort of immune computer interface, a way to update everyone's immune systems digitally, because there's just so many both synthetic and natural pathogens around. But the main character grows in a community where people do sort of heavy self-experimentation. Has a genetic disorder that she and her mom are trying to treat themselves. So I think we'll see more of that. I mean, that's already happening. So you have one of the sparks for the novel already a few years ago was the realization that just like I described these personalized cancer vaccines, people are doing DIY versions of those. So they are like, you can find instructions online, like if you have a cancer, like how
Wait,
to get.
is that legal in the US if I wanted to try to like cure my own cancer, like, and assuming I have the skills?
Well, I think like no one can stop you from ordering those reagents and putting them together and sort
But
of.
it could be illegal. I mean, there's lots of things that are illegal that maybe no one can stop me doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a very gray territory. I mean, you're not really necessarily practicing medicine without permission. I mean, self-experimentation does seem to be this like an interesting loophole, and that has featured actually in like Nobel Prize winning discoveries. There's a famous example around gut bacteria that I'm trying to remember, but like self-experimentation has a long and glorious history in the science. So I think that's maybe an interesting direction as the tools needed to do all this become more and more democratized. People will just bypass the system entirely.
Hannu, I was curious what you thought. I saw an interview with Bill Gates quite recently where he talked about like we're not ready at all for the next pandemic. What do you think about that?
We are not.
So where are we? Where do we need to be?
So I think that there's sort of a spectrum of threats there. So there's the natural pandemics and then there's the synthetic ones. The kind of just to kind of play out one scenario. I mean, the immediate situation is H5N1, so avian flu, which now is obviously in birds and causing egg shortages, but also like more worryingly in cows, cats, other mammals. And now we've seen some human cases, although not yet human-to-human transmission. So and clearly, I mean, the virus hasn't yet developed the mutations it needs to jump into humans and human-to-human transmission, but it does seem like a matter of time. And I think we are unprepared for that. So we don't have approved tests. We don't have like, I mean, there are a couple of vaccine programs in development, but those may also be behind the actual mutational curve. And can we scale those sufficiently? With bird flu specifically, there's a literal chicken and an egg problem. Because of because a lot of the traditional flu vaccines are produced in eggs, so now the virus is sort of wiping out that sort of resource to produce them at scale, assuming they can of course be updated in time.
Wait, what do you mean? Like we get chicken eggs and we make vaccines in them?
So you basically incubate the virus in the egg. So you make like you have, and then you inactivate the virus usually. So these are sort of very old school vaccines. This is sort of like 1950s vaccine technology. There's obviously Moderna is working on like an mRNA candidate for H5N1, and there's others too. But this is also very politicized. Like there's also like the obvious thing to do right now would have been to vaccinate all the cows. And there's UPenn has like a cow H5N1 vaccine in development, but the cattle industry actually resists it. So there's
why do they resist it?
There is just a general. So I think it's specifically actually the chicken industry that's really resistant. So there's like there's a situation. The problem is that at least with the traditional vaccines, you might not be able to tell whether a chicken has been vaccinated or whether it's been infected. And the infected one you obviously need to destroy. So then it creates problems for like exports but I mean that's not the case obviously with more modern vaccines. But that thinking kind of persists throughout the industry that you might actually like have to cull animals that you vaccinate if you can't distinguish an infection from vaccination. But so I think. But I think like more broadly, we don't really have like any kind of global pathogen monitoring system. I think Bill Gates specifically has called for this like nucleic acid observatory or like a more like international organization whose job is to deal with and respond to pandemics. I think in the current situation or the current sort of political climate, this kind of international cooperation seems to be even more challenging. Like, I mean, one of the key things, obviously, that happened during COVID was that this Chinese researcher, just like out of their own volition sent out the sequence of SARS-CoV-2, and that then immediately allowed everyone to start working on vaccines. So is that going to happen now? Like, are people going to? Because I mean, it didn't end well for that person. So
why did it not? What happened to that person?
He died.
He died.
I mean, he went. Yeah, I mean, I think he was imprisoned and then died.
Why?
The Chinese government didn't want him to release this information.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
He's seen as a hero.
Like,
Yeah, he's seen as a hero.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a heroic tale there, and sad one. But so now and like actually similarly, like I mean, South Africa was sharing. I mean, not in sort of quite the same context, but like South Africa during the pandemic was like very active sharing information about new variants, and then they basically like had economic consequences from that, so yeah, I think the spirit of cooperation actually maybe was damaged by COVID and made the concerted response harder. So yeah, I'm obviously always fundamentally optimistic that we can figure these things out, and if like we have compelling enough reasons, we will. But yeah, we certainly don't. I don't feel like we've learned enough from like 26 million deaths and like 10 trillion or whatever it was, like global GDP impact did not seem to be like enough.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It seems like any sort of top-down globalist kind of organizational response to these things just is not going to work. Like, we need to think about like, how do we have better kind of bottoms up decentralized responses to these things, right? How do we have labs just like doing stuff? How do we have speed up companies' abilities to make vaccines really quickly and like deploy them quickly? Like, it just seems like this top-down thing is just not going to work.
Yeah, I don't really trust the WHO to figure this out, honestly. Like, it just feel like death by bureaucracy. I think this is one area where philanthropy needs to step in and like fund this stuff. I don't see any business model for it. So maybe there is a business model, like there's like some output of this kind of a global cooperation bottoms up, as you say, that has like some kind of business attribute as well. But I don't think we can trust governments to figure this out. We have to like figure out a different path that is more like bottoms up driven. Because I've seen the same with immigration. Governments don't do anything, even though it's in our interest to bring in high skilled immigrants. The government doesn't care, and like it just this is like a big. It's a big failure. We can all agree, like, hey, we're not bringing in high-skilled immigrants, but it's not like the government's fixing itself. So this is another big failure by the government, and we can't just wait for it to be fixed.
Yeah, no, and I think that there's probably some kind of private model of biosecurity that we can envision. It does have some regulatory bottlenecks, but I could imagine like some sort of biosecurity as a service model where like individuals and companies actually pay for like a immune subscription to be updated against sort of both emerging and circulating pathogens.
Insurance policy or something, maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's lots of pieces to it, right? Like, you can imagine like labs over the world just like sequencing all these viruses and submitting them to like an open source kind of place, right? Like if you take all the different pieces that you might want the WHO or someone else to do, you could probably think of like a kind of bottoms up idea that like gets there as well.
But who's going to pay for it? That's the question.
I mean, there's lots of labs that are already paid for. I mean, the one of the benefits is sequencing is so cheap now, right? It's not an expensive thing to go sequence these things en masse. Yeah, I think it's doable, but yeah, it does require like thoughtful organization. I really want to get to this AI topic that you kind of briefly mentioned in the intro, Hannu. You said reasoning models kind of fit very well with mRNA. I guess talk a little bit more about how that kind of works together.
Yeah. So basically, like if we kind of remind ourselves about mRNA. So information flows in the cell from the DNA, which stores all the recipes for proteins, through mRNA, which then sort of carries that information over to the protein factories of the cell that then make the proteins, and then the proteins go off and do everything in our bodies and our construction materials and constructors and everything else. The kind of power of mRNA as a vaccine or a therapeutic modality has been that you can also put in mRNA from the outside of the cell and the protein with certain constraints, but like the protein factory still, the ribosomes still read through it and make basically whatever genetic code you want to include there. So that means you can really program the cell to make anything you want, or even more generally, like you can even affect the state of the cell. That's kind of to get any kind of biological state you want. Like you can find an mRNA combination that will drive like some more rapid wound healing or actually restore the cell to a more youthful state. And these are the kinds of things people are developing. So you have this like enormous generality, like you have this like biological 3D printer essentially that you can program. So that then means that if you can now take sort of any kind of biological problem you want to solve. Like I want this immune cell to be very active against these kinds of targets. You can now start working backwards from that desired state and try to figure out what combination of mRNAs would get you there. And that's actually a reasoning problem. Now you're actually reasoning about like causality across all these different pathways in the cell. So at a kind of a higher level of abstraction than just saying, okay, like I have this protein target and I need to hit that with a small molecule. Because with mRNA, you already have all these starting points, natural proteins that you can immediately deploy. So that's sort of a second order problem. But the first order problem is what is the combination of things you need to get from like state A to state B. So it becomes much more like a logic puzzle of the kind that the reasoning models are actually pretty good at, and are obviously getting increasingly better. And then the really cool thing is that you can also start giving it experimental data, and you can also start doing reinforcement learning to teach it specific reasoning modes that work well for biology. And these are the kinds of things we have now been exploring.
Sounds a little abstract. Can you give me give me an example of like, oh, what is a thing you'd want a cell to do or something to do that you might like go prompt a reasoning model to try to figure out?
Yeah, I'll give you a specific example. So one of the things we found at various points at Helix Nano was that quite often you have some interesting protein, like in our case actually like literally some of the mutants of COVID, like SARS-CoV-2 vaccine targets, get efficiently made by the cell when you put the mRNA in, but then they get stuck inside the cell. You want the cell to secrete them so that the immune system can see them, but they actually get stuck inside the cell. So how do we get them unstuck is like one very obvious example. And like with sort of human brain power, we figured out some partial answers where we look at sort of how do all the secretion pathways in the cell work, where are the bottlenecks where things might be getting stuck, and then we add to the mRNA mixture that we put in things that sort of modulate some of those, or might are sort of geared towards removing those bottlenecks. And that can actually get very complicated. Like you might include like 5 different things besides the main target. So now you have to like hold this set of all the pathways that affect protein secretion for the cells in your head, and you hit sort of the limitations of human like context window pretty quickly. But again, like these are the kinds of things that reasoning models can start solving, and we are basically seeing them generate very plausible answers, or actually working answers to this problem.
Oh, that's really cool. And you're saying ideally you then hook it up to an actual lab so you can like go say like try this out and then see what the result is and try to like
you actually hook it up to, and what we've done actually is hook it up to lab robots. You can actually go directly from the model designed experiment to the robot executing the experiment.
Yeah.
And this works.
Let's just hope the models never go evil.
That's the thing. That's the
hooking
thing.
them up to an mRNA lab seems dangerous.
There are definitely scenarios where this is a very bad idea. But of course, these are sort of constrained systems. Like this is not like a universal biology lab, but like a specific set. The robot sort of carries out a specific assay rather than like any conceivable one. But but it does give you this like very quick iteration loop. Which where now even if you sort of like what we're actually seeing, and there's there's like a really cool result we saw that I can't talk about, but but basically in a different problem than the one I described, but sort of analogous. We saw like the kind of performance with 2 experimental iterations that you would expect from like a smart grad student for a year. So that's kind of the level now. But then of course the system is tireless and it can just keep going, and even if it's sort of not superhuman, it actually will be functionally superhuman just by the virtue of infinite patience and tirelessness. But the interesting question now is that when are we going to get that sort of move 37 moment, like with AlphaGo, where it starts generating designs where that a human would not have been able to, and we're not there yet, I would say, but like given the advances both on the sort of baseline model side and then the ability to do RL with the kind of experimental data that we're generating, I don't think it's far.
But what's move 37?
Oh, so this was in the match between Lee Sedol and AlphaGo, the famous Go game between Lee Sedol and AlphaGo. AlphaGo made its 37th move, and all the Go enthusiasts were like, "What?" and there's
and everyone thought it was a bad move, right?
Everyone thought it was a bad move, but it was an absolutely brilliant move. And there was another Go champion who was watching the game, commentator, and I can't remember his name, but he basically said, "That is not a human move. I have never seen a human make a move like that." And then they got sort of entranced by it and said, like, "It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful."
Yeah, that's super interesting.
That move actually spawned a whole sub literature of Go. Like people then sort of, so the human Go level sort of went up just by the result of there being like a demonstration of superhuman Go ability. So
yeah. Have you been, in the last like 12 months, have you been surprised by the progress of AI, or kind of like, yeah, if one side is like, oh my God, it's going much faster than possible, I thought, and the other side is like, oh, it seems like it's plateauing. Where are you on the spectrum?
I was surprised by the biology results that I talked about. I mean, that was definitely closer. Like that happened much faster than I thought it would. Also, just generally the reasoning, like chain of thought process, kind of has been really rapid. There's this ARC AGI benchmark, like solving these visual puzzles.
Yeah,
that were from who's the gentleman who was behind Francois Cholet, who set that up.
That's the one that O3 Pro is doing really well at, right? Like the OpenAI.
Exactly. So that seemed initially like, oh, like the models are just like terrible at this, and humans are much better at this. But now it's actually like getting to sort of top human performance, especially with scaling with inference time. So that, yeah, that's all the reason. And then like I mean, I don't know if like DeepSeek was fundamentally surprising, but it's sort of showing really the power of RL also applied to reasoning, very in a very impressive way. So yeah, that's it's for me it's been like definitely updating priors on progress happening, at least in these fronts, faster than I expected.
Yeah, it's also cool to hear that there is these kind of, yeah, I guess like I see the generalized stuff, but like it's cool to hear that bio has like these like specific applications that are powerful. And I can imagine like every industry that has like this kind of deep knowledge work is kind of exploring it. So, probably take a few years for us to have like actual dividend from it. But it seems like it will be huge as like we continue improving the models and rolling them out in other industries.
Yeah. I mean, the other biology-specific area, of course, which is much more directly biological, is protein models. So protein language models applied to proteins. I think we might have talked about that a bit last time. I mean, and they
AlphaFold?
AlphaFold is I mean, in the same category. But what was actually more surprising was that the just applying transformer architectures and next token prediction also worked really well for protein structure prediction. And some of the more recent models incorporate that, and they are also generative, so you can use them to design and generate new proteins. And maybe the most surprising thing there was I guess that's almost 12 months ago now, was paper from a company called Profluent, who published a paper where they used one of these protein LLMs to basically generate new versions of CRISPR that do not exist in nature but still work as genome editors. So that's being kind of, I think that's something that's only kind of still also percolating through the industry, that now we can basically take a protein that has a function that we want and make like a completely synthetic mimic of it. That has a different sequence from what is found in nature, but still does the job we want. And the immediate corollary of this, immediate consequence of this, is that all biologics like drug IP is broken, because you can always make a mimic that is not covered by the IP. So that's kind of interesting, and that is going to have a lot of consequences, I think. But the reasoning model stuff was more recent update.
Hannu, to switch topics a little bit, I'm curious to what you think of China's progress in the biotech industry. There's an article in The Economist just 4 days ago talking about how China has made dramatic progress on biotechs, and it actually leads the U.S. in many ways. I think I saw a Twitter post by David Liu talking about how China is much faster on preclinical as well as clinical development, and there's certain areas where they just are outright leaders now on biotech. It seems like this is an area where the Chinese government is also supporting them, but it's leading to a place where I think a significant percentage of new innovative drugs are now coming out of China. Is that right?
I mean, that was the point I was making earlier, that like the pharma pipelines are now fueled by drugs developed in China. I don't know if they're necessarily like cutting edge, but they are executing faster in the clinic for sure, and are able to basically do the process from a concept to a human proof of concept much faster. And so I think which does then obviously suggest that in the US we should be focusing on really pushing the cutting edge even further, and because every kind of easy thing or every obvious thing we make is going to be executed faster in China. So
what do you think?
I think it's obviously good that drugs get developed faster and actually get deployed faster, but the from the standpoint of like U.S. companies remaining competitive, I think like it just means we need to do more moonshots rather than try to because the obvious things will get executed better by others.
Why do they move faster though? Is it they're just better at execution, or is it like lower regulations when it comes to
lower regulation, lower regulation, and really a concerted push to support like that.
I mean, you don't really associate China with lower regulation, so it's like they've targeted this industry to move fast on. It seems like.
Yeah.
Are they going to do the same thing they did with EVs with biotech, right? Can they become the leaders if they just like subsidize it and focus on it?
I mean, China has also been basically the CRO of the world. Like they've been like the biologics manufacturer and the sort of also running clinical trials, already like running clinical trials for others or animal studies for others. So they have the infrastructure.
What does CRO stand for?
Contract research organization. So people have been basically for many years.
They've already been like the kind of factory of the world to some extent.
Yes,
and now
the biofactory. Yes, yes, exactly. So now they're just using that infrastructure to do actual clinical programs.
Great. So if there's ever a war with China, like we're not going to get medicine.
Now we're going to have like bio. Yeah.
Oh, I mean that's already like the legislation and restrictions on like using materials from China have already impacted the biotech industry. So there was like the Biden administration had a whole push on how the US should become more independent in biomanufacturing, which I would imagine the current administration would actually agree with, at least theoretically. But I don't know where they're going to go with it.
Hard to tell these days, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, the vaccines that were produced for COVID-19, like the US, those were US companies that did them. Did they not produce them in the US?
Well, I guess Moderna, U.S. company, BioNTech, German company.
Sure. I guess Western company. But did they not do it in the U.S.? Like, the production wasn't in the Western?
Moderna for sure. I think I think for the Pfizer BioNTech there was at least some manufacturing in Germany. So I don't. But I mean, they obviously had
It's
to
not like they're being
scale and
manufactured in China, right? It's not
no.
like it's
No.
not like we don't have the capacity to manufacture.
Some of the materials, though, like the reagents and kind of upstream might have come from China. I am not actually pretty sure there was some global supply chain dependency, and so certain materials there was a massive shortage of. So, yeah, it's the whole like globalization down other side of the coin.
Well, I mean, I think there's huge benefits as well, right? If China is like producing drugs cheaply, there's globalization has benefits, and we can get cheaper drugs. And if they're doing a bunch of work, I mean, to deregulate and bringing drugs to market faster, I mean, we need those drugs. I mean, U.S. It's not like U.S. has the best life expectancy in the world, so we actually need, we need those medicines.
And one of the benefits of drugs is like, once you create that IP, it's out there, right? Like we'll be able to use it, and people will be able to learn from it. So it's not like a closed industry, even if like there's geopolitical kind of conflict.
Yeah, no, and I think as we sort of as came up, like I think like IP is actually hard to protect now, or much harder to protect now with these AI advances.
Do you think that like fundamentally changes the pharma industry if they can no longer rely on like, oh, we discovered this thing, we spent $5 billion on it, now that we have a patent and we can just like own that space for a few years? But if it's like super easy to go replicate it, then what happens to like this kind of pharma pipeline and farm?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think the moats just have to move somewhere else, and I think like to think of some historical examples, there is this concept of biosimilars, which is like the biologic drug equivalent of generics, and for many of the big monoclonal antibody drugs, like let's say like Humira or Keytruda, there are biosimilars like clones that others have made, but they have not fully taken over, and the process of you still need to make them, and manufacturing biologics is harder than small molecule drugs, and then obviously you have to also have the support of the clinicians and the actual market and the sort of sales force to be able to and relationships to be able to get them to patients. So I think the moats may move from the IP to that's like manufacturing and clinical and actual execution. So but I think that's not necessarily bad.
Immad, I had a question for you. I mean, you obviously worked in a very different space in biotech, throughout your career. Do you do a lot of biotech investing? Is this an area of passion for you that,
Honestly, biotech is like the one space that I think is exciting, but I don't invest in. Because the problem is, like, I just have no idea. Like, I have talked to many people, and I'm like, oh, wow, this person's curing cancer. And then they talk for a while, and I'm like, I have literally no idea what you're talking about. And most other spaces, like like my general interest, I feel like I love talking to Hannu about it, but if I talk to like a space tech company, I can, like, most of them actually are not doing science, like they're mostly doing engineering and business model and application of that. And normally I can like get my head around it, right? I'm not saying I'm a space expert, but I'm like, okay, fine. Like, you're taking pictures from space. Like, this is the cost of getting a satellite at space. Like, this is like the type of market you have, and this is how you can do it. Okay, I can get that. But when it comes to like, someone who sounds fairly smart and is doing like a cure for something that sounds important and it's a huge market, but it's going to take them 6 years to get to market, like, I just have no idea. And the more I talk to people actually in that space, including investors, I'm like, okay, it's a very specialized field where like they really do get it. And I just don't feel like I need to play there. Like there's enough investments to be made in like hard tech and software and all these kind of things that are not in this like somewhat weird space that like, I think it is like everything is different about it. Like, the investors are different. Like, the path to exit has been like pretty strange, right? Like, a lot of these companies go public before they have revenue and then they sell to pharma. It's a very different space. Like, I think it's actually, I know I would really respect the investors that started in software and do successfully play in biotech. And there's a few of them. But yeah, I just can't get my head around it.
Hannu, do you have any tips for us?
just a quick comment on that Immad. So I'm reminded of this heuristic that I heard from Charlie Songhurst, who's one of our early angel investors and has done successful. Who's actually not a scientist, but has done quite a lot of successful biotech investments also. And he basically said that the way he thinks about it is in all investing, you can essentially be successful in two ways. It's sort of like the IQ meme, right? Like the caveman and the Jedi, and then there's the sort of midwit guy, first person in the middle. So either you take the caveman approach, and you totally go with your gut, and you're like, okay, like does this person seem smart? Do I trust them? Like does this from first principles make sense? And then you make the decision based on that, or like you really like spend 1,000 hours like understanding every single detail of it, and then you make a much more informed decision. But but in fact, I can tell you that 99% of biotech investors live in the middle. and I actually so they sort of project this. They're very good at projecting the aura of specialized expertise. But actually they are. I don't think they are better. I think the sort of caveman and Jedi are actually better, and most biotech investors are not that. So as
I mean, that might actually be true in all investing, right? Like 90% of VCs don't make money, basically.
Yes.
So I think that's like probably similar.
I like the caveman approach. I think it's probably. I mean, betting on good founders generally is.
I think right at the start, like basically all you have is the caveman approach. Like, how much analysis are you going to do on like these people with like a deck and like they seem smart and have a huge idea, right? It's hard. It's hard to actually be like amazingly analytical in that position. Do you do any investing in biotech, Hannu? Or
I don't. Sometimes I get asked to advise, but I don't myself. Just don't have the capacity.
Assuming you had more time and money, would you do it? And then if you did, like, what would you look for in these kind of founders?
Give us some tips here.
Yeah, I mean, if I was able to, I might just to basically try to pay forward the support that I've been given also, and try to empower more people who try to do exciting things. I would certainly try to be very first principles about it. Like there would be that human element. Like, are you trying to do something ambitious? Are you really driven to do it? Like etc. But yeah, I think I would probably lean quite sci-fi for my bets of like does this truly have an outsized impact if successful, and then if possible just try to do a bunch of those and hope one of them pays off. So because I think that is overall, I would say, the power of Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, that if you are driven and smart, it is possible usually to raise some initial money just with that deck and an idea, even if the idea is pretty crazy and audacious. So and I think the ecosystem as a whole here has benefited from that massively.
Yeah, the more audacious, the better, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think the threshold of like biotech investing is much higher, like before you can get like, some real results? So like, would you say a company needs to raise 50 million, 100 million before they can actually prove out a concept? Or you still think with all the technology improvements we've had, like a $5 to $10 million raise can get you some real progress?
I mean, you certainly it's much cheaper now to do science than it has ever been. Like so I mean, there used to be even this, like, which I don't actually think was that successful, but there was even this model of like completely virtual biotechs who didn't even have their own labs, who sort of just like sourced everything and tried to be. But I mean, that ends up often not being the most capital efficient way. So two things. So at least on the preclinical and R&D side, it's maybe like. So if the one, just to give you a very concrete heuristic to model it. So you basically we say, okay, like a scientist basically spends their salary's worth of reagents if they're doing like meaningful research. So I mean, of course, their salaries are typically lower than like, let's say, an AI engineer. So probably actually for the price of an AI engineer, you can have like a scientist doing very, very meaningful research in the lab, and especially like if you're using a modality like mRNA or some other like programmable thing, then you can have pretty quick iteration cycles, and you can get to very meaningful outcomes with like 5 to 10 million for sure, like even less. It's the clinical stuff that gets expensive. One way that the biotech industry traditionally is very different from tech is that I think this is around 90s when a lot of the sort of genomics revolution and like the sort of genetic engineering revolution promises didn't pay off, and then the regulatory environment tightened. Biotech VCs said, okay, like we're going to try to remove all risk from the execution side, and we're just going to put together these gray-haired, experienced teams to run companies that we create. So like the VC-led company creation became the dominant model, and to some extent it still is. And that's why you often see these announcements of like biotech company X kind of comes out of stealth with like a 50 million round. But what's actually happened is that some VC fund or sometimes a couple of them together have created that company, and what is actually, and they've installed like they're essentially like a mercenary management team to run it, and then typically that round is actually heavily milestoned, so not, it doesn't get unlocked unless they sort of execute certain things. And I think the model where the domain where this model sort of works is if you have a drug candidate that you just want to test. So you have a fixed thing that you want to take through this like waterfall of clinical trials, etc., and get some pharma partnerships. Where I don't think it works is in a more technologically novel domain where you have a platform that can do many things, and it's not clear like where the best application areas are, and you have to iterate a lot and figure out where the most impact is and what is your like technology indication fit or product market fit, and I think that's much better done as a sort of a founder led thing. And if you look at the origins of modern biotech, that's what Genentech did. Like Genentech was exactly like that. I mean, it was like the Google of its time. Like it was founder led. It was tried a lot of things that failed and eventually found the right way forward. And I think with these new technologies, we're more like in that Genentech mode where it's not obvious what's going to be really big.
Really different, really cool. Thanks, Hannu, for joining us. I think, Immad, we could wrap, right?
Yeah, this was really fun, Hannu, as always. Really appreciate you taking the time, and looking forward to having you back on in a bit.
My pleasure. Thanks again.